Hello friends, I am Arpit and I am here with today's analysis. Today is 19th of December and we are going to deal with three very important topics which are in news. First is Article 200 of the Constitution. Article 200 of the Constitution deals with the governor giving assent to the bills passed by the state legislative assembly. The governor has four options. One, give the assent. Second, withhold the assent. Third, reserve this for the presidential assent. And the fourth is to give the bill back to the legislative assembly for reconsideration. Now, in this fourth option, if the legislative assembly, with or without doing any amendment, passes the bill again, the governor has to give his assent to that bill. Now, there was a judgment with respect to this case where the governor was withholding the bill. The Supreme Court said the governor, if wishes to withhold the bill, has to give this bill back to the assembly for reconsideration. By doing this, the Supreme Court has virtually crippled the powers of the governor. The second is India's Arctic expedition. India's Arctic expedition is now going to be there for the entire year. Earlier we used to do for summer months only, but now for the winter months also we are going to do this expedition. Scientists from 4 institutes in India are going to go there and do research work on astrophysics or climate change or I would say the conditions of the winter lightning over there in the polar areas. So this has been a significant achievement for us, and India has become one among the very few countries who is going to have an year-long observatory over there. We had an observatory in the name of Himadri earlier. Now Himadri was only working for summer months. It is now going to work for the entire year. The third topic is suspension of MPs. Suspension of MPs, we can see that 92 MPs collectively from Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha have been suspended in the ongoing winter session of the parliament. These MPs have been suspended because they were blocking the proceedings of the house. Why they were doing so? Because they were opposing or they were protesting against the parliamentary security breach where two people entered the parliament house and they blew up color canisters in the parliament. Two people were outside. So on this issue, they have been protesting and they have been suspended. What is the maximum length of suspension? Actually, it is for the ongoing session they have been suspended. Most of them have been suspended. But yes, it can be extended to indefinite also. So we will look into the details of all these three topics one by one. Now, Article 200 of the Constitution. Now, in polity, we read conflict between center and state. And one of the major artists in the conflict between center and state is the governor. The governor is appointed by the center and is working as head of the state governments over there. So obviously, this is quite natural that the governor will be more inclined towards the center in case the government is different in the center and the state. Means government belongs to different political parties. The conflict will be there. And one of the key linchpins of these conflicts will be the governor. Now, what kind of conflicts have been there with respect to the governor or via the governor? The major conflict is that the governor does not give assent to the bills given to him, passed by the state legislature. The governor's pockets are considered to be deeper than the president's pockets, which simply means that the discretionary power with the governor is at times considered to be more. But there was a case. The name of the case was State of Punjab versus Principal Secretary to the Governor of Punjab and another. Now on November 10, 2023, the Supreme Court bench headed by the Chief Justice of India gave a judgment in this case. This judgment actually crippled the powers of the governor and gave more primacy to the legislative assemblies. How the powers of the governors were crippled, we will see. For that to understand, we need to first understand the provisions of Article 200. So what is Article 200? It empowers the governor of a state with respect to the bills received by him or her after passage by the state legislature. So state legislative assembly, if there is, a legislative council, then the bill goes to the legislative council. Since most of the states do not have a legislative council, I am not counting it. Legislative assembly passes the bill, it goes to the governor. Now governor has to give assent to the bill or withhold assent. Whatever the governor does with the bill, it is there in Article 200. The governor has 4 options. First is give assent to the bill. Quite normal, natural. If this happens, no conflict is there. Withholding assent to the bill. This is something which is actually a bone of contention. Then the third is reserving the bill for president's assent. Again, in states like Tamil Nadu and Kerala recently, this has also become a major bone of contention. We will discuss this at length. But as of now, I am leaving this. I am coming to the 4th point because we need to understand the judgment better. The judgment is with respect to the 2nd point and the 4th point. The 4th point is returning the bill for reconsideration to the House. Now, governor can return the bill to the House for reconsideration. And by doing so, the House can or cannot include amendments in that bill. The governor can also suggest that these amendments can be there in the bill. But it is the prerogative of the House whether to accommodate those amendments or not. To do any changes in the bill or not, it is solely the prerogative of the House, that is the Legislative Assembly. So now, when the governor sends a bill back to the Legislative Assembly and then the Legislative Assembly passes the bill, the governor has to give assent to that bill. It is binding on the governor. So it is like this. Now, what was the judgment? We need to understand this. Actually, governor had discretion over here in the 2nd point, withholding assent. Governor clearly said, I am withholding assent. I am not giving assent to this bill. He could have clearly stated that. Or another option was, governor could have stayed silent on that bill. Did nothing. Kind of a pocket veto. Do nothing, keep the bill in your pocket. But withholding assent is when the governor is explicitly declaring that I am withholding my assent to the bill. And there was no such provision. There was this kind of a legislative deadlock which happened. So in this scenario, the Supreme Court gave the judgment in this state of Punjab versus the principal secretary to the governor and another bill, this particular case. Now, what did the Supreme Court say? The Supreme Court said that if the governor wishes to withhold his assent to the bill, because there should be some logic behind that, for withholding the assent. If the governor wishes to withhold his or her assent to the bill, then the governor should return the bill for reconsideration of the House, mentioning that this is the problem with the bill and amend this. Okay. So this is something which the Supreme Court stated, means Supreme Court actually linked point number 2 and point number 4 over here. Now the governor is withholding the assent. Similarly, assuming that there is some problem, you convey that problem to the House, send the bill for reconsideration of the House, and it is up to the House whether it accommodates those changes or not. And when the House passes it again, you have to give assent to that bill. Means the powers of the governor are crippled. However, the governor can take advantage of this 3rd point, reserving the bill for the president's assent. Now let us look at the judgment first. What is the judgment or interpretation? The new interpretation relates to the real meaning of the first proviso of the Article 200. Governor may send the bill back to the assembly with the request for reconsideration. Now the judgment has linked 2 options, withholding assent, returning the bill for reconsideration. The CJI has stated that if the governor wishes to withhold assent, means if the governor wants to do this, then he or she has to return the bill for reconsideration of the assembly immediately. That has to be done immediately. Through his judgment, the CJI, in a far-sighted approach, has protected the rights of the legislature in the matter of lawmaking and has crippled the powers of an unelected personality, that is the governor. So, primacy has been given to elected bodies. Now, what if the governor does not take any action? So he is silent or she is silent on the bill, keeps the bill in his or her pocket. So, in that case also, the Supreme Court said that governors cannot delay the decisions on the bill. Thus, the decisions of the top court has brought greater clarity on Article 200 and governors will have to quickly take a decision on the bill. There have been sitting, many governors are there, they have been sitting on bills for 2 to 3 years, virtually negating the legislative exercise of the state. And it is a common practice. It is like this. So, here also the Supreme Court said that the passage of the bill cannot be delayed by the governor. However, a fixed timeline has not been set in this regard. Now, on reserving the bill for presidential assent, this is something which is being taken, advantage of presently by the governors. So let's see what does these provisions say. There is still an area which can be exploited by the governors. Absolute opinion still available to a governor of reserving a bill for the consideration of the president or not. However, the constitution mentions one kind of bill that has to be compulsorily reserved for the presidential assent. That one kind of bill is that bill which has to be mandatorily, considered reserved for consideration of the president. That bill is which derogates from the powers of High Court in a particular state. If that kind of bill is passed by the Legislative Assembly and that comes to the governor, then the governor has to send that particular bill to the president for, passage. Now, apart from this bill, this is mandatory. This the governor has to send. Apart from this, the governor can also send other types of bills to the president. The constitution is actually silent on this. So since the constitution is silent, there are no restrictions, no, I would say, obligations. The governor virtually can send any type of bill. So this is what the case is, and that is why there are advantages. Now there are 2 episodes in the recent past which have happened. The first episode is with respect to Tamil Nadu. Now the Tamil Nadu governor sent 10 bills for reconsideration of the assembly. Reconsideration means the fourth option. After the Tamil Nadu assembly reconsiders it, it would be bound on the governor to pass the bill. But what did the governor do after receiving? This is Tamil Nadu Legislative Assembly, passed the bill, went to the governor. The governor sent those bills back for reconsideration, and after they were again passed by the governor, now the governor had to give assent to the bills. But what did the governor do? The governor passed these bills to the president. This is something which is actually unique. Governor now had to give assent to these bills because they had been sent for reconsideration. But now the governor has sent it for presidential assent. Governor sent all those bills to the president for his consideration, which is patently against the constitution, Article 200. Then next is Kerala governor. He did not act on 8 bills that were with him for over 2 years. When the Supreme Court took up the Kerala government's petition challenging the governor's inaction, he gave his assent to one of those 8 bills and sent the 7 bills to the president for his consideration. So this is something which was done. Withholding and then passing one, sending the rest for the presidential assent. This is something which is happening in states like Kerala, Tamil Nadu, in Punjab also it was happening. So the Supreme Court has come to the rescue. So things should be very clear that development, which is the main agenda of the government in the center, if development is being stalled due to these bills, then these should not happen. Now, India's Arctic expedition. This is the second topic which we are going to cover. Now, Himadri is name of our research center in the Arctic region. This Himadri is here in the Svalbard, I would say, archipelago. Svalbard, this belongs to Norway, group of islands it is. Here it is. Now, India's Arctic Research Station, Ny-Ålesund, in the Norwegian archipelago of Svalbard. The research station is named as Himadri, and since 2008, this research station is there. Now, this is going to receive first winter expedition comprising 4 scientists from 4 different institutions to Himadri. Now, earlier, since this Himadri is there since 2008, we were doing expeditions, but our expeditions were summer expeditions. This is the first time where we are going to go into this region in winter. Now, why research was not taking place in winter months earlier? The mean temperature in February, the coldest month, was minus 14 degrees Celsius, and in July it was 5 degrees Celsius. This is summer, and that is obviously winter. But due to extreme cold, taking scientific observations or sampling has remained largely limited to the summer months. India will join a small group of countries that operate their Arctic research bases through the winter. Now here you have to find it that which all countries are operating all around the year doing research work in the Arctic region. Because UPSC has become this much, I would say that it can ask on these lines also. Now, another important thing which you need to know with respect to this topic is research in the Arctic versus research in the Antarctic of India. What is the difference? Okay. Names of those research centers also should be known to you. Okay. Now, both of these are polar regions. So, largely I would say domains of research or areas of research are largely same. Okay. But yes, since both of them are there in the different hemispheres, they have certain differences attached with them. So, we should understand those differences. First is Arctic has sovereign jurisdiction of 8 Arctic countries. These 8 Arctic countries are part of Arctic Council. This we covered somewhere in October month about Arctic Council. The 8 countries: Canada, Denmark, Finland, Iceland, Norway, Russia, Sweden, and the United States. So our research station is in that region or in that archipelago Svalbard, which is under the sovereign jurisdiction of Norway. So these countries have their respective sovereign jurisdiction in the Arctic region. Whereas if we talk about Antarctic, it is a no man's land. It is governed by an independent treaty called as the Antarctic Treaty. Now research is governed by Svalbard Treaty of 1920, United Nations Convention on Law of the Sea, and independent jurisdiction of these 8 countries. So India has been a signatory of Svalbard Treaty since 1920 itself, part of UN clause since 1960s or 70s whenever it was adopted, and with our I would say bilateral relations with these countries, we operate over there, especially Norway, because Norway is the place where our research station Himadri is there. The Arctic is harsher and more remote for exploration, whereas the Antarctic. The Arctic region has its own challenges in terms of limited access, harsh climate, several months of darkness, and presence of dangerous wildlife like the polar bears. Whereas Antarctic is harsher and more remote for exploration, dangerous wildlife is relatively not there. Penguins, a lot of penguins are there in the Antarctic region. Okay. Research stations over here, Himadri, we already covered it. Here we have actually 2 research stations, Maitri and Bharti. But our first research station in Antarctic was in 1983 we established, that is Dakshin Gangotri, which is now submerged under snow. So technically speaking, this now no longer exists, but these 2 are still there. In Arctic, despite signing this Svalbard Treaty in 1920, we opened our first research station, that is Himadri, in the Arctic region in 2008. Since 2008 we have this Himadri over there. Before 2008 there was no presence. Now the research domains or the research areas where research happens in the polar, I would say, regions, both of these, Antarctic or Arctic. atmospheric research, oceanic, biological, geological, glaciological, earth sciences research. Now, in recent years, climate change research has been attracting scientists a lot because climate change has impacted this region a lot. In the last century, the average temperatures of the Arctic region have increased by 4 degrees Celsius. If I have to give you some facts, 4 degrees Celsius rise in temperature since the last, I would say, uh, century, in the last 100 years. So, this region has been one of the most impacted regions of or due to climate change. Now, the winter expedition. The winter expedition by 4 scientists from Indian Institute of Tropical Meteorology, Pune, IIT Mandi, Raman Research Institute, Bangalore, National Center for Polar and Ocean Research, Goa. These 4 institutes are sending their scientists, and this National Center for Polar and Oceanic Research is, I would say, the nodal center of research of I would say polar research in India. Now, research domains: atmospheric sciences, astronomy, astrophysics, climate studies, and now this expedition will also study lightning over the Arctic in winter, the role of precipitation in climate change, characterization of radio frequency environment, and role of aerosols in the climate change. All these things will be studied by this winter expedition, which is currently going there in Himadri. Next piece of news, which is going to be the last for today, that is suspension of MPs. Now, around 92 MPs have been suspended collectively from Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. And all of these belong to the Indi alliance, that is a newly formed alliance of the opposition parties. The suspension is due to the fact that they were disrupting the proceedings of the House. Why they were disrupting the proceedings of the House? They were disrupting it because they wanted, lot of debate and discussion about the security breach in the parliament. They wanted some resignations. They wanted other actions to be taken. So, let us see in detail what suspension means. The MPs in both houses were suspended for disrupting parliamentary proceedings while protesting last week's parliament's security breach. In this parliament security breach, four, I would say, young people, two entered the houses of the parliament and two remained outside. And they opened color canisters inside the house as a symbol of protest. Now, why they went in, who sent them in, or who is behind this, or what are the reasons behind this, this all is being investigated by the security agencies. Now, they all coincidentally met on an online platform, that is Facebook. And that Facebook page has been disabled. Some of the evidences have been trampled upon, they have been burnt. So who is behind it? This is a big question. So that has to be found out by the security agencies. Total 92 MPs have been suspended in the ongoing winter session. Why were the MPs suspended? Because they were disrupting parliamentary proceedings while protesting last week's parliament security breach. Why do MPs disrupt the parliament? Over the years, 4 broad reasons have been identified for disorder in legislatures. First is the lack of time available to the MPs for raising important matters. Second, the unresponsive attitude of the government. Third is deliberate disruption by parties for political or publicity purposes. And fourth is the absence of prompt action against MPs. Now, these are over the years the reasons which have been found out that why disruptions happen by the MPs in the parliament. The list can be increased also in the time to come. Now, who can suspend the MPs? The presiding officers, Speaker of the Lok Sabha and Chairman of Rajya Sabha has these powers. There are certain rules or parliamentary rules according to which the suspensions happen. Now, in Lok Sabha, rules 373, 374 and 374A, rules of the procedure and conduct of the business, entail provisions for suspension of MPs. In Rajya Sabha, rules 255 and 256, the procedure in both the houses, they are largely similar for, suspending the MPs. Now, MPs are earlier given warnings by the presiding officers. Despite of those warnings, if the MPs do not adhere to those warnings, then the speaker or the presiding officer in Rajya Sabha, they take this action, and their action is conquered by the houses, members of the houses. So this is what the procedure for suspension is. Now, for how long can the MPs be suspended? So first of all, let us look into the offenses, kind of offenses. There is this, I would say, hierarchy of offenses. First is mild offenses. They are punished by admonition or reprimand of the MPs. Reprimand is more, I would say, rigorous as compared to admonition. The second is punishment of withdrawal. Now, the presiding officer may direct such member to withdraw immediately from the house, and any member so ordered to withdraw shall do so forthwith and shall remain absent during the remainder of the day's sitting. So this is withdrawal. It is kind of a prior step as for with suspension, when we consider suspension. Now, the next is punishment of suspension. A member can be suspended at the maximum for the remainder of the session only. Means the winter session, those who have been suspended at the maximum, they can be suspended for the entire session. Otherwise, the presiding officer can mention in his suspension order that for these many days in the remaining session, in the remaining session, the MP has been suspended. Maximum length of suspension will be for the entire session. Now, moreover, the House at any point of time can reinstate the suspended member by passing a motion. So this can also be done. Next is in cases of extreme misconduct. The House may expel a member. Now, a step beyond suspension is expelling a member to rid the House of persons who are unfit for membership. So this is completely, the membership is gone. This is also there. So these are the things which you need to know in case of questions being asked from this particular domain, suspension of MPs in the parliament, because this is something which is happening almost in every session of the parliament, whether monsoon, budget, or now the winter session. The opposition members are crying that democracy is being killed, our voices are being suppressed by suspending us. But there has to be a middle ground found, and this should not disrupt the legislative procedures of the country. So this is it from my end in today's session. I will be dealing with other such important topics in tomorrow's session. Till then, you guys very well know what to do. Keep studying, keep reading, keep writing, and most importantly, keep revising. Namaste. Jai Hind.